everybody. My name is Noni Mugera, and this is the Plunge Podcast, where we deep dive into conversations that need to be had around self development, healing, and transformation. So, this is my first ever episode of the Plunge Podcast, and I'm super excited. And I just want to deep dive into why in the world I decided to even start a podcast to begin with. So, first and foremost, I am a certified journalist. So I have worked in the media industry for a while. And as a journalist, I just kind of felt like the space didn't really have something that I was passionate about. Conversations that were around journalism at the time when I was graduating was about talking about politics, talking about sports, talking about human interest stories. And I just kind of felt like there's no niche area for that for me. So this is something that I've really wanted to do for a while. And I just thought to myself, why not merge journalism and something that I'm super passionate about, which is self development, healing, and transformation? And then the second reason why I decided to come up with the Plunge podcast is because I have gone through my own personal healing journey. It was interesting. It's crazy. I'm still going through it, but I would say that I'm at a really good 80% of healing and transformation. So I would really like to deep dive into that. I also feel like society doesn't really talk about this kind of conversations. A lot of the times, the banter that goes on around society's things to do with music or celebrities or shows, etc. But we never really look behind the curtains to kind of figure out why do people feel the way they feel? Why do they act the way they act? What kind of things trigger them? What kind of traumas are they going through, etc. And I'm not coming into this as like a professional or a counselor or a therapist, but it's something that I'm really looking forward to also deep dive into. But before I think about getting into counseling, I am going through counseling right now. So this is kind of going to be a journey that I kind of let you in through my own personal journey and maybe help someone else who's kind of struggling with how they're feeling, what they're feeling, why they're feeling the way they're feeling. And yeah, I want us to deep dive into that. So, my first podcast episode is going to be around validating yourself. So, how do you learn to validate yourself? I went to a really posh women's I really hate using the word posh, by the way, but it was super posh. It was a women's leadership forum. It was all about women. We were around, I would say, 60 to 80 in the room. And one of the facilitators kind of like told us to come up with three words, or rather a word or a phrase that you're going to use to anchor yourself for the year. And I really thought about that. I was like, what kind of word am I just going to, come up with? Am I just going to think of a random word, or should it be intrinsic and natural and authentic? And I allowed the words to come to me. And the words that came to me were bold, deeper, and fun. And when I decided to deep dive into those three words, they helped me unpack a lot of things that I had been thinking about doing, but I never really got to doing the actual thing that I was thinking about doing, right? So the first word was bold. And to be bold means, or rather, to be bold to me means that I have to step out of my comfort zone. And my comfort zone is that I have a really cool job, right? I am a communications practitioner in a nonprofit organization. So that's easy for me. Like, I didn't have to do any other thing. But um, this year, I really wanted to be bold. And I was like, how am I going to be bold? By studying this podcast that I've always wanted to do. God knows how many times I have spoken to myself, to my bathroom mirror. If my bathroom could talk, she would never keep quiet, because like I have had episodes on episodes on episodes in my bathroom. And then another thing that I really wanted to be bold about is the fact that I am actually a really good singer. And I have kept it in me for a very long time. There's a lot of people who know Noni as a singer, not necessarily as a communications practitioner or a journalist. And so I just decided this is just the year that I'm going to be bold AF and just go for whatever the hell I want to do. So that meant stepping out of my comfort zone, which was super tough, right? Another thing that I had to deep dive into was my second word, which was deeper. And so when it came to deeper, I meant it from an emotional point of view where I started really unpacking some of the feelings that I feel. Like, if, let's say, for instance, something very top surface, like, why don't I like someone, right? Um, is it because of like the way they're dressed, the way they're talking? Like, why do I feel angry when I say, for instance, when I see someone called Jane or whatever? And I started really digging deeper into that. And I realized there's something about this person that's triggering me. And I just started really wondering, why do I feel such strong emotions? Sometimes I get really angry. Sometimes I get really sad. Or I ask myself, am I depressed? I mean, you even end up Googling signs of 10 signs of depression. And I'm like, oh crap, I am ticking all these 10 signs. So what is wrong with me? And I made the bold choice to start therapy. And my first ever therapist was super clinical. She was good, but it was super clinical. We just were not a fit. It was kind of like when you go dating, right? You meet a guy or a girl, or a non binary person, we don't judge. And you date them and you realize you literally have nothing in common other than the fact that you just want to date. So that was my first initial experience with my first ever therapist. And I decided, you know what, she's not really working for me. This relationship is not really working. And I decided to be bold enough to ask for another therapist who kind of gave me a plan on how we are going to work out our therapy sessions. So, interestingly enough, after this episode, I have a therapy session. So, yeah, I'm going to be telling her all about this experience and what it is that I was feeling and the nerves I was feeling. But anyway, back to what I was trying to say. So, she helped me unpack a lot of things that happened in my childhood. And it made me realize that I might not have been validated as much as I would have wanted to. And maybe that's why I was feeling the way I was feeling, right? It's a very, very touchy subject, but I really decided that I just want to deep dive into why I feel the way I feel. And then lastly, my third anchor word of the year is fun. Um, I used to be a really, really fun person. And at some point, I think life happened, COVID happened, breakups happened, bankruptcy happened, and loss of friendships happened. And I think I got lost in the muck of it all. And I just wanted to go back to that childlike, fun, flirty person that I've always been. And I decided to start doing fun things, things that I really, really like to do. Although I don't really know if I've done anything fun in the past 1 month that I can think about. Let me see. I really don't think so. But I like hanging out with my silly friends, and I think they bring out that fun side to me. And I stopped being so serious about plans. And I just decided to just go with the flow. So yeah, so maybe that's one thing that you can take from this episode, where come up with a phrase. It could be a phrase, it could be a word, it could be words like mine. It was 3 words that will anchor you this year, and you will make an effort to keep up with those 3 words and help validate yourself through those 3 words. All right. So, another thing that really helps me validate myself is focusing on what I have in the now. So, I am a huge manifester. I love to, I like to say manifesting in 3 ways: manifest with the word man, like a guy, manifest. I'm manifesting a man, a husband, and then manifest with the word money. for wealth and riches because, yeah, we need to keep up a certain lifestyle. So manifesting, and then the last word, which is just manifesting. The kind of holistic life that I want to have. I want to have um, an amazing body. I want to have amazing friends. I want to have a really rich spiritual life. I believe in God. I realize that not everybody does, and it's okay. But having a rich, holistic experience of what it is that you believe in, and just being a truly authentic and loving and kind person. But sometimes we need to be realistic because what you're manifesting is not necessarily your current reality, right? So, understanding what you have in the now will help you get to where you want to go when you're manifesting. So, right now, in my now, I practice a lot of gratitude. Even when I wake up in the morning and I'm just like, I do not feel like getting out of bed, I have to just be thankful for the fact that I actually have a bed to wake up to. There's a lot of people who would want that and they don't have it. So I think gratitude is a really good anchor for helping you focus on what you have in the now and kind of helping you live a life that has meaning and leaving a legacy that you'd kind of like to have once your time here is done. And then I think something else that really grounds me is the fact that life isn't guaranteed at the end of the day. Um, I didn't know, AKA the South African rapper who was recently gunned down um, in South Africa. I didn't know him personally, but his death really affected me because he left his own hashtag legacy, is what he liked to call it. And I feel like a lot of people spoke so highly about him. He was someone who went after his dreams, someone who went after his goals. He wasn't afraid to get his heart broken and get back into another relationship. And I feel sometimes, I don't know if it happens to you. I know it happens to me a lot where I'm always on the cliff, kind of trying to jump, but not really, but trying to jump, but not really. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to jump tomorrow. So I go back to the cliff. I try to jump. I'm not really jumping. And I'm seeing other people jumping and living their dream lives and winning awards and traveling all over the world. And I mean, just living their craziest lives. And I wonder to myself, am I wasting my time here on earth? Because time is just not guaranteed. So I felt like his death was kind of like a jump start to telling me to kind of like wake up, like snap out of it and really go after what exactly it is that you really want to do. And sometimes I feel like I wish I had someone telling me this when I was in my 20s. Right now, I'm in my early 30s. And I feel like if someone would have given me this conversation when I was, let's say, 23, 24, I feel like I would have been in a really, really like better space right now. Not to say that I'm in a bad space, but I'm working through the space that I am in right now. And I feel like this is something that I wish someone would have told me earlier on in my life. So if there's any 20-year-old out there watching and kind of trying to decide or figure out what exactly it is that they want to do, I would just say go after your dreams and your passion. Because that's the best time to really experiment and figure out what do you want for yourself, you know? So other than that, I just really wanted to also kind of touch base into another way of validating yourself. It might not sound very um, kosher in a sense, but I love to manifest and visualize. Sorry, to not to manifest. I love to meditate and do visualization exercises. So a really easy way to visualize something is to, let's say, for instance, think of a lemon, right? When you think of a lemon, what color comes to mind? Is it yellow? Is it a green lemon? And then once you kind of put it in your hand, what's the size of it? Is it a tiny lime? Is it a big round, juicy lemon. And then when you cut it and you take a bite off of it, how does it feel? Is it tangy? Does it make your mouth kind of water a little bit? Um, it's crazy when you think about a lemon, for instance, because we don't really have one right now here. But when we talk about it, you're visualizing the lemon, you're seeing the color, you're feeling it in your hand, you're tasting it because you're visualizing how the lemon looks like or feels like or tastes like, right? That's the power of our mind. So, now, when it comes to visualization of your life, now I'd love you to kind of imagine what do you feel your life will look like in the next, say, 1 year or 5 years or 10 years. I'm going to be bold and share with you what I see for myself. Some of the visualizations that I have is I'm going to be the top, one of the top, I don't want to say the top, but one of the top podcasts in Africa that speaks about self development and healing and transformation. I also see myself traveling across the world, talking about this bold topic that people need to talk about more, having fireside chats about it. I see myself married. I see myself with a husband. I even see myself recording an episode one day when I'm probably like 6 months pregnant. I visualize myself living in London at some point in my life. I don't know where that came from, but I just visualized myself crossing the London Bridge and rushing back home. I don't know why, but that just literally came to my mind right now. And I also visualize myself having my drop dead bomb body. It's okay. I still don't have it yet, but we're still appreciating how we look like. But that's kind of one of the things that I really visualize. And I visualize myself hanging out with people who are having a very close friendship circle that is empowering to who I am, to who I want to go, to who I want to be, and where I want to go, right? So those are kind of some of the things that I visualize. I even see myself having this huge mansion in Karen that has like a driveway to come to my house, the fountain at the front of the home. I don't know whose house that is, but I visualize myself living in that house at some point in my life. And these are just some of the crazy things that come to my mind when I visualize. And sometimes, because we're not used to allowing ourselves to imagine the kind of future we'd like to see, we probably think, nah, that's never going to happen, like ever. But I feel like if you really truly believe it, if you imagine it in your mind, it's already happened in the spirit, in the soulful realm. And so all that needs to happen is it kind of coming to fruition in the physical realm. And then some of the things that but help us kind of help to validate ourselves is speaking life into ourselves. I think uh, this is something that like it was like an exercise or activity that my therapist gave me, and she told me, Lisa, every single day I want you to write something that will sorry, I just realized I called myself Lisa. So I'm called Lisa and I'm called Noni. So for purposes of this podcast, I will be referring to myself as Noni. So I caught myself there. All right. So my therapist said, Noni, I want you to every single morning when you wake up for the next 2 weeks, I want you to write down, not think it, but literally write it down, an affirmation about yourself. And I was like, yeah, sure, that's easy. I mean, I affirm people all the time anyway, so that shouldn't be hard for me to affirm myself, right? So the first day I woke up, opened my diary, and I wrote, I am a flower. And I looked at that phrase and I kind of started laughing because I was like, girl, you are not a flower. And I was like, but I feel like a flower. Like, nah, bitch, you're not a flower. There's no way. And then I actually realized that this is really hard because I was writing down something that I didn't really believe, right? And I realized, and so I was like, but why do I feel so sad about the fact that I'm realizing that I'm actually not a flower? And I realized it's because, remember my anchor word to go deeper? I started asking questions. Why are you feeling so bad about the fact that you don't feel like a flower? I mean, it's silly, right? And I realized the reason I didn't feel like that is because you know how flowers attract bees, right? So the bees come to the flower and they nourish it and even make honey. And I realized that I was chasing after things as opposed to them coming to me naturally or authentically. And so when I said I was a flower, I didn't literally mean I'm a flower. I meant that I'm creating this energy space where people come to me, opportunities come to me, network comes to me, money comes to me, good things, good energy, they all come to me. And so I didn't believe that. I believe that I have to go and chase after these people that I want to work with, or this producer that I really want to work on my album with, or this guy that I really want to date. You know, I started chasing and I realized that, and then I asked myself another deeper question: why do you feel the need to constantly chase? And I realized that I was coming from a place of lack where I felt like I didn't really deserve this opportunity or these networks or to work with this particular person. And then I went deeper. Why do you feel like you can't work with this kind of people? And it's because I answered myself and I said, I just don't think I'm worthy. And then I think a voice asked me, do you really think that you're not worthy? And I mean, really deeply, do you really feel that? I said, no, I actually, and this is me having a conversation with myself. I said, I actually believe I am worthy. I am worthy of all these things. And I am going to stop chasing. And I think when I realized that is when I felt it in my spirit that, oh, wow, oh shit, I actually am a flower. So I'm just going to start attracting people, energy, networks, teams, everything that I want to manifest this year to come to me. And I think after that session, I felt really light. And I was like, oh my word, my therapist was up to something here. And so that's kind of how, after this whole 2 week thing, I decided and I told her, I think I want to start my podcast about this. And she was like, what in the world is a podcast? And I had to explain to her. And she said, wow, that would be really cool. So yeah, start working through it. And so I started working through it. And I finally decided to start it, and here we are. So I think my first episode is literally me validating myself to be here today and sharing this with someone out there. And I think what I would like you to really get out of this episode today is one, come up with your anchor word or your anchor words or your anchor phrase for the year and commit yourself to actually following through. And the second thing and last thing that I would love for you to take from this first ever episode of the Plunge podcast is to deep dive into who you really are, what exactly validates you, right? As an individual, as a person, in your career life, in your relationships, in your own emotional well being, spiritual well being, mental well being, in your holistic 360 view. What are some of the things that validate you? And then maybe in closing, I will say that don't look to get validation from people, because another thing that my therapist pointed out to me is that people will validate you, but with their own agenda and not necessarily with you in mind. And that really hit home because I realized a lot of the people in my life, and I have really cool people in my life, but most of them would validate me with an agenda in mind. I don't know what that agenda is, but it just never really felt genuine. And so the people who will validate you for who you really are the people you feel the safest around. Someone who you know, when you open up to this person, they're not going to judge you. They're not going to take advantage of how you're feeling, and they're not going to steer you to the wrong direction. They will give you advice because they really want to see where you're going, and they're really invested in who you are as an individual and not necessarily what you can offer to them as a person. So, yeah. Um, I would say that's something that I really took home, and I started validating me for me. So thank you, everybody. And please follow me on my channels everywhere on at the Plunge Podcast. My name is Nani Magera, and it has been a pleasure ranting to you about some of these conversations that we need to have. And I promise the next one, I'm going to have someone in studio with me, and we're going to be discussing more about conversations that need to be had around life and culture and self development and healing and transformation. I know it's a heavy topic, but we're going to make it fun, we're going to make it cool. But trust me, you're going to become a better person just by investing in this podcast, in these episodes, and investing in me. And I love you for taking the time out to watch me and listen to me. And peace.